Hello everyone, and welcome back. Now tonight, I'm looking surprisingly orange according to this, if the screen on my camera is correct. I'm looking surprisingly orange tonight. Does that change it? No. I think you're just going to be stuck with me in Cheeto vision. Anyway, we're back for some more OCD reading tonight, so I bought my therapy dog, and the other one, and I bought my book, which if you have a look, this is the beginning book. I'm almost halfway through. Isn't that amazing? And we're only on chapter 12 so far. Hope that's right. Anyway, without further ado, shall we begin? Now this time I actually remember where I was. If you remember, we're talking about contaminations. I'm sure you remember it if you've been watching the previous ones. So let's go on, shall we? How does a contamination / washing problem get worse? We're going to find out, aren't we? Why take the risk at all? Washing your hands might feel like a small price to pay to avoid the risk of something terrible happening. However, when you think about the disruption caused to your life and probably to other people's lives, and the time taken up, is it really a small price? What have you stopped doing or stopped enjoying because of these concerns? See, as I mentioned in the previous video, this one doesn't really bother me. And I think when I was young I was quite bad with this, but it's something I've seemed to have fixed, somehow gotten better with. I mean, I have other compulsions, obsessive compulsions, you know, but not this one, but we're going to carry on reading. Many people stop going out, stop touching other people, avoid many foods due to these concerns, which is understandable. Most importantly, how do you feel when you're paying this price? Does washing your hands really make you feel better and less anxious? Sometimes it really does. Does it make the idea that something bad will happen go away? Sometimes it does, that's why you do it half the time, I think. Or does it actually keep these ideas around, keep you feeling anxious and miserable, and stop you doing what you need or want to do? But this is the thing, see people, although we think it makes us better, it doesn't. It makes things worse. What is more, you don't get to find out what would happen if you don't wash your hands. That actually people are unlikely to get ill or die. That is very true. The chances are slim. Never impossible, but slim. Keeping a track of dirt / germs. If you think that an object is contaminated with dirt or germs, it is tempting to put that object in isolation until you can clean it or dispose of it. The problem with this is, firstly, that you are treating your thoughts or doubts about contamination as true, which makes them feel more important. Secondly, it is very difficult to keep track of what is dirty and what is not without devoting a great deal of time and attention to the task, which means that you can't do other things that you need or want to do, and you end up preoccupied and anxious. Feeling right. If you hold a front-end belief that something bad will happen if you don't wash your hands, it would follow that you now wash your hands in a very thorough, ritualized way to try to discern that you have removed all possible contamination. If you don't do it in this way, you may not feel right. This is not surprising, given you have got into the habit of doing it in this particular way. However, using feeling right to judge how to wash your hands generally leads to hand washes becoming longer, more intricate, and more rigid to try to... Rigid. Yeah, I know. Sometimes I don't say these ones right, and more rigid to try to fulfill that impossible criterion. In turn, this makes you feel more anxious and more focused on your belief that it is important to worry about contamination. See page 62. We're on page 100 now, by the way. Which describe. Okay. Now we have another example, because today we're looking at Sue's again. Sue's washed her hands 50 times a day, spending 2 to 3 minutes doing a surgical scrub, where she focused on every surface of her hand and wrist. She would do this through she would do this thorough hand wash after going to the toilet and while she was cooking, but also after touching anything that someone else could have touched. This included door handles, the stop button on public transport, items in the supermarket, and her post. She would notice small red or brown marks on and think that could be blood or feces, and throw them out. She would feel extremely anxious until she was able to wash her hands. When she was out of the house, she would use alcohol rub and wet wipes to clean her hands. Her hands were red raw and swollen frequently cracked and bleeding. Despite this, she would often wash her hands again as they didn't feel clean. Now I'm thinking that Suze went through an absolute ton of hand cream. What do you reckon? Now, we got another little thing here. I don't know what these things are called, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a few seconds so that you can pause and have a good look. And I'm going to have a quick talk about it. Of course, you have assumptions about harm, and you have the thing that triggers it. Then the intrusions get in, and then it leads to everything else. Now you've seen it, you've read it, so let's carry on, shall we? What happens if the OCD carries on growing? Avoidance. Many people with obsessional beliefs about contamination start to avoid numerous situations as it feels easier and less anxiety provoking to not have any contact that might involve dirt or germs. This could mean not using public transport, not touching other people, or not leaving the house at all. Clearly, this has a hugely negative effect on the ability to function in the world. More extreme and extensive rituals. As OCD becomes more severe, it feels more believable that something terrible will happen. This can lead to devastatingly long and complex rituals, such as taking 8 hours to have a shower. Does anyone take 8 hours to have a shower? See, I often in the shower for more than 5 minutes. I get told that's a long time, actually. Actually, what is a good time for a shower? Because you've got to wash yourself all over. Put the answer in the comments below. Tell me how long you spend in the shower. We'll take notes, shall we? Honest answers only, please, because, this is a serious subject. I know I keep things light-hearted, but sometimes, you've got to be serious. Anyway, back to the book. Sometimes people dread the lengthy rituals so much that they actually avoid doing them. So it is not uncommon for the paradoxical situation to arise when someone with a field of dirt and germs actually avoids having a shower for weeks or months, as they know it will take so long to do it properly. Okay, I'm feeling quite blessed right now, and privileged, because I've never been this bad with anything. The next bit talks about this. But this isn't how it works for me. That's me reading the book, by the way. If you wash your hands a great deal but don't have any contamination concerns similar to the examples given here, there's several other things to consider. Let's carry on, shall we? There it is. Mental contamination. The most common reason why people compulsively wash their hands is to avoid contact with dirt, germs, disease, and other forms of contamination. However, sometimes people wash their hands to try to remove a dirty thing associated with a particular personal horrible experience. OCD still works in the same way, engaging in rituals or avoidance, will only temporarily remove this feeling and perpetuates the anxiety. Page 95, the way this works is described in greater detail. An important step in dealing with mental contamination is seeing it for what it is. Often this is about feeling dirty because you have been treated like dirt, betrayed, or otherwise treated badly by people you trusted. It is understandable that people who feel contaminated by awful things done to them want to wash away their feelings of being violated. But of course this doesn't really work. You can't wash away what's inside your head, though it might seem that washing makes you feel better for a short time. Once a person is able to recognise that the washing does not help with the real problem, this opens the way to refocusing on the real problem. Often this will require expert and specialist help in order to begin to come to terms with the things which make the person feel dirty in the first place. See also page 237 for further discussion on how to deal with this. We're on page 103 at the moment, people, so we're not going to be there for a long while yet. I know I won't get a disease, but I don't want to lose track of the contamination. It will feel out of control. In chapter 5 we'll spend a lot of time on the question, what is so bad about that? And what's the worst thing that could happen? So even if you are not worried about disease, there will be something that is anxiety provoking about losing track of contamination or feeling out of control. Other people are dirty. I've got it right to be this careful about dirt and germs. Now, some people truly are dirty. And I can see how some people get like this. If it really doesn't bother you or interfere in your life to take sensitive precautions to avoid contamination, then OCD is not a problem for you. However, if when you think about it, you are paying a high price to avoid the risk in terms of hours spent washing or cleaning, avoiding other people giving up on enjoyable activities, being preoccupied with thoughts about dirt and germs, then it is worth considering taking the risk of doing things differently. We can never guarantee that nothing bad will happen, but we can guarantee that OCD will get worse and take over your life if you continue to avoid and engage in safety-seeking behaviours. Yes, it is. I turned 2 pages there for a moment. Right. The insurance policies. An insurance salesperson comes to your door. Man, that's an old story. You don't get that now. It's all internet nowadays. Think about it. It's basically been internet for as long as I can remember. One of my parents, if you wanted insurance, you had to go into your local town centre and see an insurance broker, and they would work stuff out for you, and you'd have to pay what they asked. On with the book. I have 2 policies on sale today. The first covers you for fire, flood, accidental damage and theft. It's £50 a month. The second deluxe policy covers you for fire, flood, accidental damage, theft, alien invasion, plague, meteor strike and acts of God. This is £1 million a month. Which policy would you prefer? Now, I know insurance people. Most of those things they would probably consider an act of God, which, as we all know, is insurance code for we don't want to pay you, we want to keep the money for ourselves. No offence to anyone who does work in insurance, but I know what the companies you work for are like. Not you personally, I'm sure you're fine. Anyway, back to the story. Well, I'll have the first one, but the second one is much more comprehensive. These things might well happen. Surely you want to insure against that risk. But I can't afford £1 million a month. The price is too high. These things might happen and they were beautiful. They are not that likely. If I spent any more than £50 a month, I'd have to go without something else that I need or want. I see what they're doing here. Although it is not obvious at first, OCD works like this. Don't take risks, it says. Better safe than sorry. What only becomes obvious much later in OCD is the true cost of avoiding any possible risk. OCD takes over everything in your life, your happiness, your relationships, takes all your free time and so on. The things OCD takes away from you are priceless, and you actually get no protection at all. You also get all kinds of real harm. OCD is a sleazy insurance salesman. That's one way to describe them. Summary. If you believe that you are responsible for preventing something bad happening, such as spreading disease, you'll feel very anxious and do things to try to lower the risk of that happening. All the things you do actually have the effect of refocusing you on your belief that something bad will happen and make you feel more anxious. They can lead to tragic consequences such as never leaving the house or touching anyone else. Now, we've got some little things here. I don't know what these things are called. If you do know, let me know in the comments. And look, I'll put the book here. No longer orange. Down. Orange. Normal. Orange. Not orange. Orange. Not orange. Orange. Not orange. Any idea how this works, people? Because it seems that whether I appear orange or not is completely random. Now we're going to read this. The anxiety-related beliefs. Number 1. I'm responsible for preventing the spread of contamination / dirt / germs and stopping something bad happening, whether it be illness or death. How does it keep the problem going? I'll tell you. No one can actually stop the spread of all dirt / germs / disease. That is very true. All you have to try to reduce the risk actually focuses on the potential danger and leads to you feeling more responsible, not less. Anxiety-related belief. If there is any risk that something is dirty / contaminated, I must do something about it. How does it keep the problem going, you ask? By not taking the risk, you don't get to find out that actually nothing bad happened. Safety-seeking behaviours. Washing your hands or other parts of your body or inanimate objects in a repetitive, ritualised way. But how does that keep the problem going, you ask? Once lengthy washing starts, any shorter or less comprehensive washing doesn't feel enough. Rituals and repeating don't make things any cleaner. The only result is feeling more anxious. We all know this to be true, people. Let's carry on. A safety-seeking behaviour is using your hands feel to work out when to stop washing. Sorry, using how your hands feel. That makes a lot more sense. How does it keep on going? Because this is a dangerous way to decide to stop washing. The more anxious you feel, the more dirty you feel. The more you wash, the more anxious you feel. Now, in case you're quickly wondering, it literally means is, you hear your hands are dirty, so you wash them. Because you fear contamination, death, illness and all other stuff. So you wash them. But you keep doing it because you're that scared of it. And as you do, you think, do my hands feel clean? Yes, but then it will feel unclean again, so you've got to do it again and again and again. You know I'm right on this, people. Safety-seeking behaviours. Avoiding touching. Example, door handles. Now, how does it keep the problem going, you ask? By avoiding, you prevent yourself from finding out what would happen if you do touch all these things. That actually you are unlikely to contract a disease or spread it to anyone else. Being on the lookout for trouble. Example, looking for red or brown marks, such as blood or feces. Monitoring yourself or other people for ill signs of your health. Now this is a form of selective attention. Once you start looking, you'll spot marks on objects that no one else would have seen. By throwing the objects out, better safe than sorry after all. You do not have the opportunity to find out that the marks on the objects were harmless. By tuning into whether anyone is showing signs of ill health, you will notice the smallest sniff or cough. And that is contamination over, I think. Now we're on to rumination OCD. Throughout the day we have all sorts of thoughts going through our minds. Whether we are conscious of this or not, the content of thoughts could be anything. Thoughts may not come into our minds prompted by some cue, such as seeing a car shop and remembering that it is a friend's birthday. Other times, thoughts can be unprompted, screaming to pop in from nowhere. In the case of a thought about, say, picking up the dry cleaning, a memory of a great holiday or getting a fantastic idea for a story. The sudden appearance of these thoughts is unlikely to be troublesome, and we will probably think of them as useful, positive or just neutral thoughts, and may even forget about them seconds later. However, given the nature of our minds, eventually we are bound to think of something that could be considered negative. Sorry, I lost control of the page there. Where are we? Yes, sorry. Let me start the sentence again. However, given the nature of our minds, eventually we are bound to think of something that could be considered negative, such as thinking about a relative dying or thinking how easy it might be to jump in front of the next train. Some people, experiencing such negative intrusive thoughts can be very uncomfortable as to wonder why they had that thought, what it means about them to have it. Obsessive rumination describes a process of reacting to upsetting intrusive thoughts by thinking about them over and over and again and again, in an attempt to resolve the discomfort. This type of OCD looks different from other forms in that there are no obvious physical compulsions. It is sometimes referred to as pure O to reflect this. However, although they may not be obvious, the compulsions are going on inside the person's mind. They may take the thought cancelling out the worrying thought with other thoughts, or mentally wrestling or arguing with it. Sometimes there are also a number of very subtle physical compulsions, such as the avoidance of particular situations, and generally taking extra care of things. Depending on the content of the rumination, sometimes obsessional rumination can occur, along with overt physical contaminations. And now we have some examples. See, in the thing which I don't know what it's called. But I'm going to be reading it, so you don't really need to see this. Example of an intrusive thought. A heterosexual person have an image of someone of the same sex when having a sexual experience. Content of the rumination. Am I homosexual myself? Thinking that a school child is pretty. Rumination. Am I a paedophile? Or if you're American, pedophile. Intrusive thoughts. Thinking about death. Is this a premonition? Thinking how easy it would be to drown your baby when bathing them. Could I just go mad and do something terrible? My thoughts don't fit with OCD. What if I don't have it? But what if I don't have OCD? And I'm actually a terrible person for having negative thoughts. Now, there may be times when most people will respond to an intrusive thought, like the ones above, by wondering what it means about them. Rumination OCD, the person is really stuck in the doubt and cannot move on without trying to mentally resolve the worry. You can identify whether or not your response is to thoughts or compulsions by asking yourself, when I get my troubling intrusive thoughts, can I just let it go and dismiss it without feeling too worried? The answer is no, and you find that you're spending a lot of time in repetitive, circular, anxiety-provoking thinking about the meaning of your thoughts and why you're having them, then you may have the rumination type of OCD. Rumination is not random. For many people troubled by constant rumination, the question why am I having this thought is really important. And the reality is that rumination is not random. There is a pattern. Loving mums and fathers are troubled by thoughts of harming, abusing, or neglecting their children. The religious person is troubled by blasphemous thoughts. The gentle person by thoughts of violence. The open-minded person by racist thoughts, and so on. So what does this pattern mean? Well, it means that in OCD, the intrusive thoughts focus on your worst fears. What could be worse or more upsetting for the loving mother than the idea of image of sticking a needle in her baby's eye? That's an image I could have done without until just then. Where was it? Having had that thought, you might recognise it for what it is, your worst fear, and you would shudder and get on with feeding your much-loved baby. However, some people are understandably so horrified by the idea, which has intruded into their mind, that they jump to the wrong conclusion. Having this thought means that I'm a sick person, a child abuser. The interpretation can and does in OCD lead to a whole bunch of problematic reactions. Backing away from baby, insisting that others be with you whenever you are with baby, trying to push the thoughts out of your mind, and all the other counterproductive or sessional reactions described above, not to mention the unbearable fear and unhappiness that follows this interpretation, which of course makes your thinking patterns even more negative, in one of those vicious circles which makes OCD thrive. See page 77. We're not going to, because we've done this already. Here we go. The little chart. Do I have rumination OCD? Have you had thoughts, doubts, or images that you find upsetting or think that you shouldn't have? When your thoughts are bothering you, do you A. Try to work out what your thoughts mean? See, if I get intrusive thought, I usually just shudder and think, good God. B. Push the thoughts out of your head or try to deliberately think about something good. That is something I usually do when something negative pops in my head. C. Try to argue with the thoughts or yourself. Now, I've had many arguments with myself. Not about those though. D. Try to seek reassurance from others that the thoughts don't mean what you think they do. Oh no, I'd never mention my things to thoughts people. What did I say now? I've told you lot. So, I've told someone. E. Do you mentally review your thoughts and or actions over and over again? Sometimes I do, yes. F. Does this process make you feel anxious? Sometimes, yes. G. Do you spend significant amounts of time doing this at the cost of other things in life? I'll pass on that because I don't know how to answer. Now, we're going to leave it at that tonight because it's coming up to the rough time that these videos last. And it is getting late as well. It is for me anyway. And I'm still orange. It's like watching this in Cheeto vision. Anyway, I'm James. You've been watching me do some OCD therapy. So it's good night from me. It's good night from the book. Good night from Jennifer Lopez. And it's good night from Slow Down Milosevic. So until next time, bye everybody.